All right, guys, welcome back to another video in our series, Real Estate Investing Made Easy, where all we like to do is make real estate investing easy. And so this is just one more video in our trainings here, so you guys can learn how to become a real estate investor in as simple a method as possible. Here we have Christian Weatherspoon here. We're going to talk to you about getting started as a newer real estate investor. What are some of the drawbacks and roadblocks and challenges that you might run into, common pitfalls, and some of the initial steps you might want to take as you're starting out in your real estate investing journeys. Christian, love to hear from you what your thoughts are, and as a seasoned investor, what are some things that people typically, I don't know, do we want to start with common pitfalls, or where would you like to start?
Well, let's just start with the most important, and that is, if you're considering getting into real estate investment and you say, man, I want to do this, just understand why. And what does that mean? Because let's just define real estate investor for a minute, because real estate has so many different niches. Frankly, niches that even as a seasoned investor, having been doing this since 2009, I'm not that familiar with, because you find what speaks to you the most in terms of what you are good at based off your aptitudes, and then, of course, your passion. So going back to the why are you getting involved in real estate investing in the first place? And if you're watching this video, you're asking that question. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't have clicked on this video. Give me a drop in the comment and let me know why you decided, hey, I want this journey, okay? So let me throw that back at you. Why did you want to get started in real estate investing?
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I think we can definitely define is what real estate investing is not, could be. Real estate investing is not a get-rich-quick scheme. So for those of you who are watching who think, oh man, I see all these guys that are posting videos standing in front of Lamborghinis and talk about you should, get involved and, do this and do that. Like, sure, you absolutely could get to that point. But the reality is, for the majority of real estate investors across this country, it's really just a way to provide a good living for their families and put food on the table. The bulk of real estate investors that I know, and I know thousands across the country, are not driving around in Lambos and Ferraris and, all these crazy cars in, multi-million dollar mansions. Most of them are just making enough money to make ends meet, put a good amount of food on the table, and live a decent life. So that's the first thing you have to realize. So if you think it's a get-rich-quick scheme business, this is not going to work out well for you, because you're going to feel it's a lot more difficult than what a lot of these gurus make it out to be.
Show me the money!
I agree with that. It's a sliding scale too. It's definitely not a get-rich-quick scheme. It can be just a get-rich.
Yes.
Not a quick, not a scheme, because it's about how much you want to put into it, which is why tying it to the why is so important. What do you want out of it? Is this a part-time gig? I met Jonathan, who went to my church, or he still goes to my church, and he is flipping a house right now in San Bernardino, California. And he's flipped 2 houses his entire life, but he works as a recruiter for a different company outside of the real estate business. He and his wife flip on the side. So they're real estate investors. And he told me, he said, oh no, I'm not really an investor. I just do this on the side. Well, you really are an investor. And that's the capacity that you want to do it at, to serve your needs and your goals. So it's important to understand why first and what that really looks like for you. And then we can talk about how do you get started? Because again, the niches, it's like, are you going to flip? Are you going to wholesale? Right? And those are the two most common. So we can cover those a little bit.
Oh, yeah. And to that point, too, a lot of military guys end up in a roundabout way becoming real estate investors because, often they get deployed and they get stationed in different places. And so a lot of times what happens is somebody in the military, and this may be you that is hearing this, that's in the military, and you want to learn how to get in real estate. A lot of them, they leverage their VA loan to get a property. They'll live in the property. And then all of a sudden, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years later, they get stationed to a different place. Maybe they're on the East Coast and they get sent to San Diego, but now they have this house with a really great mortgage and they know it's appreciating. So rather than selling that house and moving, they actually rent it out. Ergo, they're now a real estate investor because they're making money on a property that they don't live in, right? And so that's just one way that people become real estate investors without even really taking on the title of real estate investors. But going back to your original question, Christian, of why I got into real estate investing. So My mom was actually a real estate agent for about 15 years, and my parents actually flipped a couple homes back in Philadelphia, and I actually helped them. I clearly remember pulling carpet out, pulling up tack strips, pulling out the nails out of the concrete that were holding the tack strips on. And we did that, on multiple different properties. And it was really exciting. It was fun. It was cool. Nothing's more fun than demo day, right?
Right.
When you get to break stuff, right? What kid doesn't want to just go around breaking stuff, right? Especially when you're a kid that grew up in the middle of the hood in Philly. So that was always fun. And then, eventually my mom went into being an appraiser, and she's still an appraiser to this day. But I never really had a true desire to get into real estate because I didn't really understand the investor fixing and flipping side of things, even though my parents were doing it a little bit. I just kind of thought my view of real estate was being an agent. And that was my whole view. And I just knew that I didn't want to be an agent because my mom was an agent for a long time, and it seemed like she never stopped working. And now that I'm a real estate investor, it kind of feels like I never stopped working.
Until the sale comes, which is why, by the way, something else we're going to be talking about too.
Yeah, absolutely. But, like you're always going in. To me, it's not work. I enjoy it so much. I get a thrill out of what I'm doing. So I enjoy sitting up at night, talking about different strategies, different things that we can do, how we can grow and scale the business.
You're on a vacation right now, right?
Yeah, exactly. I am on a vacation right now. But ultimately, the reason I wanted to get into real estate investing is because I wanted to help people. I really saw a need where, people tend to be going through distressed situations, whether they're in pre-foreclosure, whether they have tax liens, the property is distressed, or maybe they inherited a property that their parents weren't taking care of, and now it's a burden for them. There's a whole host of reasons why people might be in a challenging situation. And oftentimes, those people end up getting raked over the coals by, our good old government, where, they come in and, they take the property, or the bank takes the property, and it leaves them with nothing. And it leaves a dark stain on their record that prevents them from being able to get another property. And so I really saw an opportunity to step in and help people while also being able to make some money along the way. And so it seemed like a win-win. And then, of course, leveraging my 25 years of sales experience, it just made for a perfect fit. I had a lot of sales experience in home remodeling, windows, siding, roofing, gutters, garage doors, like you name it, flooring. I sold flooring for 3 or 4 years, decking. So I had a lot of experience in the home building space. And it just seemed like a perfect marriage of my sales experience and my experience in the home building space. So that's why I got into real estate investing.
That's awesome. And you need to decide for yourself your true desire, right? Why you're getting into real estate investing. Because if your answer is just to make money, that alone isn't enough. It's not enough. Because there are so many other ways you can make money.
Absolutely.
And quick money and big profits.
Yeah, you could be a poker player.
You could be a poker player.
You can make a lot of money or lose a lot of money.
And that's kind of similar to real estate investing.
That's for sure.
That's how you play a hand like a pro.
You probably already know that you can make or lose a lot of money in real estate investing. That's why I want to talk about how to even get started. So now that we kind of have what might seem like a platitude out of the way, we can dive into a little bit of how to get started. And we'll look at 2 different situations, right? Whether it's rehabbing or wholesaling. And we'll discuss a little bit about that. Now, I will say one thing, though. You mentioned the demo phase. I remember the first time I closed on a property and I was rehabbing it. I was excited for the demo, and I picked up this sledgehammer. It was a lot heavier than I anticipated. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go for it anyway. We were in the scope of work, taking out a wall. So I lifted it up and I swung it once. And I was like, oh, okay, here, done. Not the guy who wants to continue swinging that multiple times because it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So that gave me not just that one instance, but a lot of insight into contractors because I never had been one. I'm still not, but managing rehab projects for these flips was kind of good insight into a good contractor is worth their weight in gold.
There's really a lot of different ways you can get involved in real estate investing. You're going to hear there's gurus out there that are just going to tell you, oh, everybody that wants to be a real estate investor, you have to get on the phone and talk to sellers. And I'll tell you, that couldn't be further from the truth. Quite honestly, there's a lot of you that are probably watching that, quite honestly, and don't take this the wrong way, should probably never get on the phone with sellers. Not that you aren't capable of learning it, not that you couldn't do it at a decent level, but it's just not really in your nature to really be great at that and wake up and enjoy that on a daily basis. And you don't have to do that, right? If speaking to sellers is not really in your wheelhouse, partner with somebody that is. Maybe you are more designed to be the guy in the background who's, making more of the financial decisions, monitoring the employees, managing contractors, developing relationships with other people, or just simply working on spreadsheets, right? That are going to make sure that you guys are managing the profits and losses appropriately, right?
Yeah,
so there's a lot of ways to get involved in real estate that don't just involve you talking to sellers or talking to agents.
That's true. So really what we're going to start with is the basic roles. So that kind of segues nicely into it. Do you want to get on the phone with sellers? Do you want to, if you're flipping properties, manage contractors? In the beginning, if it's just you, it's you in all of those things. So you have to be disciplined. That's the first thing. And ultimately the roles that you really want to understand and know is you have departments in your real estate investing business, whether you know it or not. That fact, it was a hard lesson for me to learn because I wasn't good at accounting. So I didn't really take into account the profit and loss in these statements. And it didn't affect me from a tax perspective because I had a tax person. But what it did do was it made me pay a whole lot more in taxes. And not only that, it also inhibited me from being able to get financing from individuals with, in the beginning, a lack of understanding how to position myself, as well as forget about business credit, forget about loans from banks as you continue in your career and progress as a real estate investor. But ultimately, how do you even get started? Well, the first thing, obviously, I get this question all the time. Like, do I need an LLC? Do I need a company? And if I do, where do I go? How do I get it established? I always say this, and it's because I heard this quote from Richard Branson. If I'm the smartest person in the room, I'm in the wrong room.
That's for sure.
Right? And the truth is, I don't need to know any of that stuff. I have a cursory knowledge of it, and I'm going to share it with you right now. But the main point is align yourself with an expert who can help set up a company for you. The very first company I started on LegalZoom. It was an LLC in California, and I just went through the steps, checked the boxes I was supposed to checked the tax selection, and then got my entity set up and said, okay, cool. I'm going to, when I start to buy properties, buy it in the name of my LLC. The truth is, you don't need to. Now, there's reasons why you want to, and I'll explain that. However, you don't need an LLC or a business to invest in real estate. You could do it in your own name. You can do it in multiple people's names.
Which, to be clear, that's not what we're recommending. So please don't go out and start doing real estate investing in your own name and then come back and be like, oh, Chris and Christian on Real Estate Investing Made Easy said you don't need to set up an entity or an LLC to start real estate investing. Legally, it is not a requirement to get started. I know plenty of people that they got their start doing 1 or 2 or 3, maybe even more transactions just in their own personal name. At the end of the day, you have to weigh out the risk versus the reward, right? So let's just kind of look at 2 different scenarios. Let's say you are fresh out of high school and you just got your high school diploma and you're just getting started. You have no money to your name, or maybe you went to college for a little bit, maybe even graduated, and you have a lot of debt in your name. You don't own a home, you own a crappy car, you have no assets or anything. Really, the purpose of an LLC is to protect your assets. So in the event that you get sued. So in a situation where you don't have any assets for somebody to come after, an attorney, when they're presented an opportunity to come and sue you for something, whether it was something you did right or wrong, they're going to look at you and say, you have nothing to take.
I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want. But what I do have is $2 and a Casio wristwatch. You can have one of them.
If anything, you have debt to take. And I'm sure you would gladly hand over your debt if that's what they want, but you have nothing but debt, right? So it doesn't really make much of a difference whether you're set up in an LLC or not. Now, let's position this differently. Let's say, you're somebody who, went to college, put all the time in, energy, effort, and became a doctor, spent 12 years in college. Maybe you're a neurosurgeon and you've made a ton of money. You have multiple properties. You have a vacation property. You have a main house. You have all these different assets, big 401k, all these different things, right? Well, if I'm an attorney and somebody presents an opportunity to sue you for something, well, now that looks like a lot more reason to go after you and spend my time, energy, and effort to try to track you down and get some money out of you, right? So in that scenario, an LLC would be way more beneficial, if not a larger corporate structure that would protect those assets that you have. So in the event that somebody tries to sue you, they can't acquire any of those assets and take the things that you spent a lot of time, energy, and effort to earn over the years.
Yeah. And some tips about the structure of your entity that I can share with you come with this caveat. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an attorney. I'm not licensed in that capacity to give legal advice, nor am I a financial advisor. So with that disclaimer, just know when I say we need to leverage the expertise of our team, which is the whole point of if I'm the smartest person in the room, I'm in the wrong room. That's what I want to underscore. And how to get started in real estate investing, we'll go under the assumption that you're going to want to set up an entity. And it's this way, right? You could do it in LegalZoom. That's fine. I would begin by actually going to RIAs, going to meetups in your area and networking. And you can let them know, hey, I am going to set up my entity. I'm curious, who did you use in the area? And then find a good attorney, somebody who can facilitate that for you. And I'll tell you, as we talked about the worth its weight in gold, a good attorney that's a real estate attorney is worth their weight in gold just as much as contractors are too. So you want somebody in your corner that's able to guide you through and navigate you through the complexities of things that you just don't know, even when you're an expert, when you become an expert, because you don't want to be an expert at everything. Believe me, that puts too much on your plate. It's not scalable. It's not sustainable. You're going to burn out. And then it's so much easier to lose sight as to why you got into this business in the first place.
100%. It's interesting. What I find often is there's a lot of people that transition to become real estate investors. Surprisingly, it's two of the same groups of people. It's typically nurses and teachers are very often getting into the real estate space.
And military.
Yep. And, but specifically with nurses and teachers, right? We all know that people that do the most and contribute the most to society generally are the ones that get paid the least. And when I've talked to a lot of these nurses and teachers that have got into real estate investing, they always answer the question the same way. Why did you get into becoming a nurse? Why did you become a teacher? And it's always the same answer. I wanted to help people. I wanted to help either people in need who were dealing with health problems, or I wanted to help children and get them an education, help them grow and learn so that they could be better in their lives. What typically happens is they get burnt out in their role because it's a rewarding job, but there's generally not a lot of praise involved. They don't get the glory that they deserve for everything that they do, nor the money. And so they want to make a transition where they can still leverage their desire to help people, but do it in a way where they can make more money to provide for their families.
Yeah, absolutely. So figuring out your why is a little bit of a recap, and then aligning yourself with the right people, and just to take note of who those right people are. So at the end of the day, there's resources out there, many of which are paid, but many of which are free. And it might surprise you how many people are in the group. PACE, subject to PACE Morby, would call a go-giver. So they're just really interested in helping other people because rising tides raise all ships.
Help is on the way, dear!
Once you've set up your entity, which of course I would go, in my personal opinion, with Arizona, Nevada, even investing in California, I would then focus my attention on what am I going to do. You can start with wholesaling. I would recommend that. It's the easiest thing to do in the real estate investing business. And that is to say this, that it's the first step in rehabbing a property anyway. And by that, I mean, you have to acquire the property, and then you have to, make sure that it's a deal. And instead of, taking it on yourself, then you will assign that to somebody else. And just a quick and dirty, what is wholesaling real estate? Well, wholesaling real estate in its simplest form, we're talking less than a 60-second overview, is this. You find a property, and we'll talk about that, how to find a property. And then you, as the investor over here, you sign what's called a purchase and sale agreement between you and the owner of that home. And then instead of closing on the property with either somebody else's money or your own money, and then going through the rehab, you say, you know what? I am going to assign the rights to purchase this property to somebody else. Think of it as a teacher assigning homework to their class. It's just, they're not going to do it. they're assigning this to you. So, okay, you take this over. They created this piece of homework. Maybe it's math problems. And then they hand it to a student and says, this is your homework. Do it. Take it to the finish line. So that's kind of what it is. And then once you get that other investor, who we will call the rehab buyer, because in this case, we're talking about somebody who's going to fix it and then sell it to a retail buyer at the end of it. What then you do is enter into an agreement that's called an assignment agreement. And really, the long way to describe that is an assignment of purchase and sale agreement. And ultimately, once you enter into that assignment of purchase and sale agreement, they now step in your place, and then they, instead of you, are the buyer. Well, how do you get paid in that scenario? You have an extra fee, ostensibly, tacked on to that for the rights. So you're selling the rights to purchase it. So let's just say the purchase agreement was $100K, and then you put this deal together. You spent the marketing money to find that property and spoke to the seller and agreed on a price. You deserve some pay for that. That's what that rehabber was going to do anyway. But instead of them spending the money to do that, they just know you. So you're a good person to know in this scenario for that rehab buyer. And then you'll say, okay, well, I'll give this to you for $10,000. So you get your 10K fee. And then essentially, or effectively, what their overall output of money is, notwithstanding closing costs, notwithstanding any of that stuff, is $110,000. So that's the really quick, 60-second overview of what wholesaling is.
I think that might have been more than 60 seconds. You guys can check the timestamps.
Wait, that seems like it took seconds.
Yeah, it might have been more than 60 seconds, but I can tell you that is just in its most simplest form. And there are other questions to be asked about wholesaling. So if you have those, please put them in the comment section below, and we'll love to answer those questions for you too.
So Christian, just if I can kind of summarize this, let's just kind of recap this. So essentially what it's like is I pay to go to a private dinner engagement to get a seat at a table with a seller, right? Mm-hmm. So that's essentially what I'm doing. I'm committing to pay to sit at the table with this seller, right? And I say, hey, I can't go to this dinner, right? Effectively is what it's like. Mm-hmm. And I say, Christian, how would you like to buy my ticket to sit at this table, right? And I'm going to sell him that ticket, same way they do with baseball tickets, football tickets, where they mark them up over and above the price that they actually bought it for. But I say, Christian, I'll sell you my seat at the table. You just have to pay me a little extra because there's no more tickets left. And a lot of people want this. So if you don't buy it, somebody else will. And so Christian's like, well, I'll pay you extra for that seat at the table. And now he gets to sit at the table with the seller. And that table just happens to be the closing table where he'll bring his funds to close on the transaction that me and that seller originally agreed upon.
Yep. Then I'll own the house as that rehab buyer who bought the wholesale property from Chris. And then I'll fix it up, buy and hold it. Doesn't matter what I'm going to do with it. That's not your concern as the wholesaler. However, it is important to know your market, to understand what your buyer. So he would have to know that I want to dine at that restaurant as the example. Because if I didn't want to dine at that restaurant, too bad, so sad. You could have had the best deal in the world, but if you don't know what I want, then I'm not going to buy that property.
Absolutely, absolutely. So there's something called reverse wholesaling. And I'm not a big fan of reverse wholesaling, but ostensibly what they're trying to do is they're trying to find buyers, right? Find buyers first. Understand what their buying criteria is. Maybe this particular buyer over here, we'll call him John, only likes 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,500 square foot properties that are below $500,000, right? Maybe this other buyer over here, we'll call him Adam, he only likes properties that are 5-bed, 3-baths that, are 2,000 square feet and are $750 and above. So if I go to Adam with a property that's $350,000 and doesn't fit the rest of the criteria for him, he's like, yeah, no, I'm okay. I don't want that. But if I take it to John over here, who that fits his buying criteria, he's obviously going to want to purchase that property. So understanding your buyer first and then backtracking to work with your sellers, right? You need to understand what your buyers are looking to spend and what they would reasonably spend on the properties that you're looking at so that you can make the proper offer. And I'll tell you, I can't tell you how many times I have unsubscribed from wholesalers lists when they're sending me emails. I unsubscribe to wholesalers lists all the time because I'll give them typically 3 shots. They'll send an email, it'll come in, I'll review the numbers. I'll look at it. I'm like, this is not a deal. There's an $80,000 repair budget and $2,000 of profit. That's a loser, right? Or, $75,000 and maybe it's $10,000, right? I'm unsubscribing after the third time of reviewing that because quite honestly, I don't have all the time in the world to constantly be analyzing deals that wholesalers are selling me when their numbers are terrible. So if you're going to get in the wholesaling space, I strongly encourage you to get to know your buyers, find out what they're willing to pay, dial in your numbers. The better you know your numbers, the better you're going to be. And don't think for a minute that you can start out making these types of mistakes, and sending these bad deals to buyers, because once you get blacklisted because they think you don't know what you're doing, it's very hard to get off of that blacklist, So you want to set the right standard right out of the gate and know your numbers and ask questions. Like, they're fine with working with you. Most of the buyers I know out there, they'll be happy to have a conversation with you and tell you, where you made some mistakes and what you need to fine tune.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, it sounds like you actually like reverse wholesaling, even though you say you're not a fan of it. Tell me more.
What I don't like doing is finding a buyer and getting in contract with a buyer when you don't actually have a property under contract. And I've seen people do that. And quite honestly, it's sneaky, it's underhanded, and that's the fastest way to get yourself blacklisted, because
Thank you for clarifying, because you didn't explain exactly what reverse wholesaling is.
Yeah.
So what to look out for is, if you are interested in a property that you have not yet gotten an accepted written agreement on, don't enter into an agreement or an assignment agreement for that purchase when there's no contract in place.
Yeah, absolutely.
That you do not want to do. But you can find your buyers first. And that kind of brings me to another really key component of getting into real estate investing and what you should know, and that's your market. You have to know your market. We're all part of the market, whether you're participating or not. And what I mean by that is, before you were a real estate investor, you lived where you lived, and you're at least vaguely familiar with the prices in your neighborhood or the next neighborhood away. I never lived in La Jolla, California. I lived in Pacific Beach, but I can tell you that for the most part, property values in La Jolla were a lot more expensive than, Pacific Beach, but also, say, Chula Vista. That's not necessarily 100% true anymore. However, the point is, you need to know your market. And where do you go to do market research? Seriously, realtor.com, realtor.com, and the National Association of Realtors, NAR. So you go to NAR.com and realtor.com. Zillow is good when it comes to big market data trends, but of course, don't buy into a seller saying, I want this estimate, because it's not even close to what it should be. They're okay with track homes when everything's the same, but it's not really a good valuation. They lost how much last year?
Billions
on their own, very confident assessments of property values. And it also doesn't take into condition as part of that evaluation either.
Absolutely.
They don't know what the condition of the property is.
Yeah, generally, and they don't know rehab costs. They've been off pretty significantly. As a matter of fact, we've made offers on properties where one of the closest comps to the property is a property that Zillow is actually selling. And when we go back and we look at the tax records to find out how much they purchased it for, because we can do that, or we can look on the MLS and see what they purchased the property for originally. Oftentimes, they're actually selling it today for $30,000 to $50,000 lower than what they actually paid for it. And that doesn't even take into consideration any holding costs they had and any money they might have put into it. But, I want to touch on something regarding the assignment of contract, right? And so I want to show you a different way that you can wholesale that Christian didn't mention, and has a little bit of different pros and cons to this particular method, an assignment of agreement, right? Of purchase and sale agreement. But there's also what's referred to as a double close. And so we have a house that we're purchasing it. We have the seller here who wants to sell his house, and you are the wholesaler, and you enter into a purchase and sale agreement with that seller, and let's call it $100,000, same scenario. But in this scenario, you find that there's an opportunity to make a lot more than $10,000, and you're worried that your buyer might be upset or not really want to see you making $50,000 on a transaction, right? So another way that you can do this is you can actually take this agreement and go to the closing table with escrow. Now, this is going to require you to come to the table with your own funds, right? And that could be hard money, it could be private money, it could be whatever. There's a whole host of different ways. So you actually close on the property, you pay closing costs, and now you take title of this property. So now you, Mr. Wholesaler, are the owner of this property that you purchased from the seller. At which point, it could be an hour later, it could be a day later, it could be weeks later, you then go and now you are the owner of this property. Right? So now instead of that being the seller, now you are the seller and you say, okay, I want to sell this property to this fix and flip buyer, but I want to sell it for $150,000. And this renovation buyer or rehab buyer says, oh, that's a great deal because once I put $50,000 into it, I can sell it for $300,000. So he says, okay, I'm going to buy this property from you. And then he goes to the closing table with you and closes escrow on this property. And now you made $50,000 minus, of course, any of your holding costs, any financing costs that you had along the way, and any other escrow fees and things of that sort. So that is another way that you can wholesale a property.
Yeah, and it really is the quickest and easiest way to get started with little or no money. Now, of course, that begs the question, how do you do it with little or no money? We're going to get into that. We have a video that talks about that. It's linked in the description below, getting started in real estate investing with little or no money. And you can check that out. For this context, we just want to give you an overview of how to get started in real estate investing with things to consider. And of course, we talked about teams, your roles, individual roles. Even if it's just you, just know that these teams exist. So, Chris, in your opinion, you had gotten started later than I have, but you've been in this business for a while. So in your opinion, somebody's new coming to real estate investing or deciding they're going to start, what roles do they need to fill, even if they're wearing all the hats, in your opinion, do you think are the most important?
It's a great question. I think a lot of it depends on how you're getting involved in real estate, whether you're doing it on your own or whether you're going to be joining somebody else's team or partnering up with somebody. There's a lot of different ways that you can get involved. So, some of the basic ways you can get involved is you can start out and just communicating directly with agents, build relationships with agents and talk to them about the different types of properties that maybe they have a tough time selling, right? Maybe properties that need a lot of work and can't really sell on the MLS, they're only cash buyers or, things like that, right? So they can develop relationships with agents and have agents bring them dead leads or leads where it's like, hey, I can't sell this on the MLS. It was burned out in a fire. Right. So it's not livable. So you can't get a normal mortgage on it. Right.
Yep.
Things like that. So they can build relationships with agents. They can, work with wholesalers, partner up with wholesalers. There's a whole host of different ways. What are your thoughts? What are you thinking as far as roles to get started?
So when you're getting started in real estate investing, you need a real estate investing team, whether it's just you or whether you have a partner. And yes, this means that internally in your own business, it may just be you. But there are other extensions of your business. And even if you don't think of it this way, that your real estate agent, if you have an attorney, your title company, your escrow company, those reps, they're part of your team.
And there's a difference between team member and employee, right? So just make sure, when you're talking to people, you're not telling people, oh, I have employees that work for me that do all this stuff, right? Because that's not necessarily the case, right?
Yeah.
But a team member, that's a very informal statement, right? And, allow the person to think what they want to think. But teaming up is just you and somebody else working together on something.
Yeah, that's true. And I'll tell you, the three main ones in the wholesaling space, if we're talking about this, are going to be at first your real estate agents, your title reps, your escrows, and then of course we talked about the buyers too. So those are about the four that you're really going to want. And there's other people too that are involved in this and that could be beneficial to enroll. Not necessarily if you're not rehabbing. Clearly, who would we add to this list if we were rehabbing? Contractors, right? For sure. And then even stagers and photographers. And then you need your
Inspectors.
inspectors, PEs or structural engineers, right? So those are the types of people that you want on your team. But
Real estate attorneys, probate attorneys.
Attorneys are really important actually in more complex situations, even if you're wholesaling it. So that's another one to add to this list. And just so we're clear, as a national audience, I'm kind of going off of what we do in California. We use title companies to run title, escrow companies to handle all of the paperwork and money.
And sometimes those companies are the same companies.
Sometimes they are.
They both.
And in some states, they're just using attorneys.
Yep.
Or just using title. So just know that this list can be a lot shorter for you if you have a rep that does all of that, or one company that does all of it in your state. So as far as this quick list, I just want to talk about the benefits of each one of these. You mentioned real estate agents, and when you were mentioning it, what it sounded like was from a marketing standpoint, finding properties. But how else could real estate agents benefit you? Despite that, we will have another video to a playlist, actually linked in the description, that talks all about the agent-investor relationship and how incredible it is. But just for an overview, starting your real estate investing business, noting that you need a real estate agent, how can they benefit?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things that might be challenging for somebody new getting involved is, what could this property be worth, right? Like, how do I actually comp properties and understand what the ARV is? And if you're not sure what ARV is, that is after repair values, the value that you could sell the property for after it's been repaired. And so one easy way to do that is to partner with an agent who has some experience, understands renovation costs and things of that sort. Maybe they've renovated and fixed and flipped some properties themselves, and they're looking for somebody who's hungry to work with. You're looking for somebody who's hungry to work with, and you partner with them, where when you go out to meet with a seller or walk a property, they help you to run comps. They tell you what the ARV is. They tell you what they think you might need to put into the property to bring it up to that value, and what some of those comps are selling for, how long it's taking those comps to sell, because that's something that's very important, the days on market, right? Like, if it only takes you 3 months to fix the property and get it ready to go, but all of the properties in that area at that price point are taking 3 months to actually sell, so now you have to factor in 6 months of hold time, not 3 months, right? Versus, another property in a different area might only take 30 days to sell, and another area might take 15 days to sell. So understanding how many days on market, what the ARV is going to be, all of those different things is something you can really leverage an agent to help you with.
Got it. Yeah. And so, if you're seeing what we're writing down here, the bottom line is valuations, right? What is it going to be? Course based off of the comps. That is then to determine your after repair value. And it's all based off of the market, which ostensibly are the comps, but it's also more than that. It's about where are we trending, if interest rates are going up, if it's a hot market, a buyer's market, a seller's market, is a stale market. So those are all really great ways that you can just get saturated and steeped into real estate to up your game and get educated as a new real estate investor, or even if you're already a real estate investor and you've been doing this for years. Like, this is how you can go to the next level, whatever that is for you, based off of your goals.
Absolutely. And one thing to point out is, why is the ARV important? Well, the ARV is important because that's really what your whole business model is predicated on, right? Is what can you sell it for? And, there's a phrase, you make money when you buy your house, not when you sell it. So if you buy it right, that's where your profit sits. And the way that we build out our offers is all predicated on the ARV. So when we know we can sell it, let's just take an example. Let's say we know we can sell the property for $500,000. Then we backtrack and we say, okay, well, based on this particular property and the things that need to be done to get it to $500,000, we know we're going to have to put about $50,000 into it. So now we backtrack down to $450,000, right? Because we have to pack in that renovation cost. Well, then what else do we have to pack in? Well, we have to figure out, okay, how much profit does our fix and flip buyer want to make? And on average, it's going to vary from buyer to buyer. Some people are going to be looking at margins, percentage margin, 10%, 12%, 15%. In other areas like San Diego, for example, where the purchase prices are significantly higher, the general rule of thumb is for every dollar in renovation cost, they want to get $1 out of it. And so if you know that it's going to take $50,000 to get it to 500, you also want to factor in $50,000 for profit. So now that brings you from 500 down to 400. Well, it doesn't end there, right? Because you also have to factor in, how long is it going to take for them to do the project and what's their holding costs going to be? And you might not know that without talking to a buyer and understanding what are they paying for the money that they're actually using, right? Are they paying 8%, 10%? What is the interest rate that they're paying, or do they have their own money? So you factor that in. And then on top of that, you want to pack in a little buffer for your own profit, right? So maybe you want to make $10,000 or $5,000. You need to add that in. So when you factor all those things in, just right off of the top, you know that your number has to be below $400,000, and you're probably going to be somewhere around 350 to 375 in that range when it's all said and done. If you want to make just a reasonable profit and not hit a home run deal, right? Like the best deals are the most consistent $5,000 and $10,000 deals. Have we made $50,000 on a deal? Have we made $200,000 plus on a wholesale transaction? Absolutely, and those are great. But I would take every single week making $5,000 to $10,000 of profit on a deal over a grand slam home run deal once every 6 months, all day, every day.
Because one of the biggest challenges, especially for investors that are beginning, is the lack of consistency of deal flow. And that could be so discouraging. But if you're taking the evaluation, you're getting better at it, you're using agents or an agent in your area who's on board with your vision, who wants to grow their business, then it's going to help encourage you to know that you're on the right track. If you are able to come up on your offer and get the deal, but you only make 5K, instead of losing, right? Just because you were like, no, I wanted 15, right? Take that 10K hit, like make some money.
Exactly.
And then move on.
Yeah, exactly. What do they say? 50% of a dollar is better than 0% of 100.
I think you say that. He's the they.
Wait a minute.
The other one, we'll just go in order. So real estate agents to build your team as you're getting started. And then title reps. Let's talk about those. Why would those be beneficial other than the obvious that clearly we need to run title? But what does that mean? How can they help you in your real estate investing?
Yeah, title reps hold, they help in a lot of different ways, actually, outside of just simply the transaction, which is really, really important, by the way. And, we definitely want to point that out. What the title rep's job to do in a real estate transaction is to make sure that the seller is delivering clear title with no cloud on title. And what does that mean, Christian? What does it mean when there's a cloud on title?
It could be a lien or encumbrance or something. Like, for example, even a mechanic's lien, where maybe they hired somebody to come fix something in their property. Typically, you're buying as an investor distressed properties, and maybe the seller was not ready to sell at that time, maybe 2 years ago, and they're like, things keep breaking. And then 2 years later, you got into contract with them, but they didn't tell you or even remember or even know that, hey, they actually paid that mechanic or whoever it was. It's called a mechanic's lien, but it could be a plumber, it could be a contractor. And then they said, they didn't pay me. Maybe it's because they were a GC and their sub came in and did the work, and then their sub got mad because they didn't get paid, and they put a mechanic's lien on that property, and the seller didn't even know. So that happens. That's a cloud on title.
Yeah. The other ways that, title reps can help, right? So their job, like I said, is to basically make sure there are no cloud on title. And if there is a cloud on title, like a lien, then they're going to help escrow or the closing attorney to help facilitate taking whatever equity from the sale and paying off those liens so that the buyer, you or the end buyer, is able to take ownership of that property and not have any debt owed to pay that off. So all that gets facilitated through escrow and attorneys. But another great way that title reps can help is they will regularly be pulling lists of different types of distressed situations, distressed homeowners, defaults, notice of defaults, NODs, probate, divorce, all different types of lists. And oftentimes, when you start working with a title agent, most title agents are going to ask you, hey, can I provide you any lists? Can I get you any lists? Or they might not even ask you. Once they have your email, they might just automatically start sending you lists of different types of homeowners that could possibly be beneficial for you to reach out to. And when you get those, you're going to want to take those and skip trace those. And, if you're not already using Best Skip Tracer, there's a link in the description below where you can actually get half off your first month with Best Skip Tracer. They are by far the best skip tracer that we found. And, it's awesome. It's worked for us and all of our clients that we do done for you marketing for. But you'll have to take that list from the title rep. You'll have to skip trace that so you can get the telephone numbers and the email addresses so that you can then start reaching out to those sellers. But what are some other ways that title reps can help out?
So the great thing about title reps is, if you're going beyond the wholesaling, right? Yes, they'll help you with free and clear title. If they're good title reps, right? And there's any sort of problem, they're going to guide you into the best insurance that you need for title. Because I've run into a situation where there was literally this weird lien on the property that nobody found. When I finished the renovation of this property, I was going to sell it to an end buyer. We were in escrow, and then all of a sudden there's this $25,000 lien that pops up because we were using a different title company. So, the title rep that I was working with, we had a binder on title. And, we can talk about what that really means instead of a traditional title insurance policy. So I said, what can I do? They said, well, we're not going to pay, that lien off if there's a binder on title. And I said, can you please help me out? Because we didn't catch this before. So what they did is they worked their magic in the back as I was leveraging the expertise of my team to change the type of insurance that we had. And then they paid the lien off. So at the end of the day, they were willing to work with me because we developed a good relationship and I was bringing them business, referring them, right? And actually, this is one individual we still work with today. So
yeah.
And we're talking about 10 years later.
Yeah. And to that point, he said something that I don't know if you guys picked up on. He said, because we had a great relationship. One thing that I really want to point out that many of you are probably getting into the real estate space thinking this is a property business, and it's a property business where you can make a profit. The reality is this is a people business. There's going to be a lot of different people you're working with, and it's a people first business. You need to develop good, strong relationships with people if you have a desire to scale your business.
You might think as a newer real estate investor, and maybe you already know this if you've been doing it a while, that, this industry is so big, but actually it's not as big as you think. There's not that many people that are doing real estate investing
at a high level,
right? When you get to a high volume of transactions, man, I can't tell you how many people we've been whoa, I was just talking on the phone with that guy that you just mentioned is your go-to person for this.
Yeah.
And we didn't know both of them even knew each other. Or they're my best friend.
Yeah. Yep. Or we did transactions this year with people that when we were cultivating a buyer's list 2 years ago, and, we didn't even look to that buyer's list because we generally will send out our deals when we're wholesaling to just a handful of people. But turns out that they were on our buyer's list 2 years ago and we didn't even realize it, and it just came up through another relationship. They're like, oh, you should talk to this guy. And then we finally meet them. And then, it turns out later, they were on a buyer's list that we had from a couple of years ago and we just didn't realize it. So.
Yeah. So, at the end of the day, what we've covered so far with the benefits of each of these team members, it does also boil down to deals. And why would I say that title reps can bring you deals? Ostensibly, they can bring you deals, right? They're not handing you deals on a silver platter. However, and this has happened and it happens, you have a personal relationship with somebody who's involved in a transaction that somebody else dropped the ball on. This title rep has brought me deals, right? Because they said, hey, they dropped the ball. This seller still wants to sell. The transaction fell apart, maybe you can help them and then you can get a deal. But also because of the marketing lists, when you're masterminding lists and stacking multiple levels of motivation, and it makes it easier for you as an individual, right? If you're doing this by yourself, especially if you're doing this by yourself, to get motivated seller lists, well, I would say they're prospects that then turn into leads at a higher rate, that can result in more deals.
Absolutely.
So the next person would be escrow. We covered a little bit about this as well as buyers, but let's just speak to escrow. The reason for finding an escrow company other than, we're moving papers around, we're moving money around. That's what their job is. But what are the benefits of identifying somebody that is like just a rock star escrow company?
Yeah, absolutely, man. This is a great question. And, I can't put enough value on a good escrow agent, title reps. I mean, all of these people, you might get into this thinking, oh, I'm brand new. And, these real estate agents, they're so much more knowledgeable than me in this space. But the moment you start getting on the phone with real estate agents, if you've been doing any type of educational, process and learning about the industry, you're going to learn really quickly that more often than not, you know more about the industry than half of the people you're speaking to, if not more. And that goes for agents, title reps, escrow agents. I can't tell you how many escrow and title agents I've talked to in the last week alone who didn't even know what an assignment of a purchase and sale agreement is, which that's like real estate investing 101. Not, it's so basic, right? And so when you start to have those conversations and you're like, I can't believe I have to teach this person who is ostensibly a professional for the last 20 years what an assignment of a purchase and sale agreement is. So I say that to say this, that finding a rockstar escrow rep and a rockstar title rep is so, so valuable, because especially escrow and title reps, these are the people that are going to facilitate your transaction, making sure that all the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, and that your transaction goes through without a hitch. And so the more complex your transaction is, the more important it is to have a rockstar escrow agent. The primary company that we generally work with, Alliance Escrow, they are phenomenal. And Cindy Sparrow, she's awesome. She handled a lot of our transactions.
So you're speaking to this, and I think the bottom line, the value, the massive value is education. Yeah. When you have a rock star, right? Justin Brown is the owner of Alliance Escrow. Super humble guy, didn't even know he was the owner and founder of Alliance Escrow. And I call him, when I first got started, I was calling him up constantly, asking him questions that he probably thought, dude, this guy why does he think I'm his coach? I called him up and he's like, no, let me walk you through this, Christian. I'll help you out. And just step by step by step by step. And we're talking about complex things. I was doing a subject to seller finance combination for the first time. That was my first deal that I ever did. And it was,
Wait, your first deal ever was a hybrid deal?
Yeah, dude. And it was a rehab.
Insane.
Bro,
this was
crazy.
Back, and for clarity, right? Because, any of you who are watching who are sub-2 students, you're like, oh yeah, that was my first transaction too, or my first transaction was sub-2 or seller financing. This is back way before Pace Morby was even a name that anybody knew. This is back at, what year was this?
2009.
2009. So this is when everybody was running around with their chickens with their heads cut off.
Yeah.
And he was facilitating hybrid transactions.
And the seller was in prison.
Oh.
And I had to meet with him through a glass wall, and I couldn't even have him sign the contract. So I had to hire a notary. And then I had to teach the notary how to go in there and walk through the purchase and sale agreement and then get it signed. Only my communication with him was literally on the phone. And I'm telling you, Justin Brown helped me out with that transaction step by step. And he's like, dude, you got your hands full with this one.
Yeah.
But, I made $200,000 on the flip. So.
Nice. Not bad. That's not a bad deal in San Diego. So, so Justin Brown, the team at Alliance Escrow, they're phenomenal. You want an escrow agent who is not bothered by you making a phone call and asking questions, because
really
if anything, right, they should embrace the fact that you have questions for them, because you getting the answers to those questions is going to help them make their job easier.
Help me help you.
Right? And so you want to make sure you're operating with people who work from an abundance mindset and not a scarcity mindset, that are willing to work with you collaboratively, not competitively, right? And that's a really big thing. I've talked to many escrow agents and title reps and real estate agents who I get on the phone with them, and it feels like I'm in the Super Bowl, and it's like the freaking Eagles versus the Dallas Cowboys, and we're at each other's freaking throats all day long on the conversation. I'm like,
Trying to make a hole in one.
yeah, trying to make a hole in one with a slap shot over the field goal bar. So yeah, it is, absolutely imperative that you don't waste time working with people that don't want to work with you, right? I want to say that again. Do not waste your time trying to work with people in this space that don't want to work with you. There's a good amount of them, but there's plenty of people that do want to work with you and want to collaborate with you. So don't waste the energy on these people that are negative and have a scarcity mindset. There's plenty of people with an abundance mindset that are happy to work with you, happy to help you, and work collaboratively so you guys can all make money and get paid together.
Beautiful. We're going to skip the buyers and go to them last. Talk about attorneys for a second. And it's almost obvious, I'm sure to you, even if you're new, why a real estate attorney would be a really good person to have on your team. But give me the lowdown in your opinion. Real estate attorneys.
So you don't get sued?
Yeah. Okay, next one.
In case there wasn't any further brevity to have, you don't want to get sued. You want to make sure you're doing things legally, right? And you want to make sure you're operating with a high level of integrity and ethics, right? And, or you don't, at which case, stop watching our channel, go watch somebody else's channel. I don't want you associated with us. And
we want to operate in integrity. Yeah, that's true. So here's the truth. You don't know what you don't know, and ignorance of the law is an excuse. It's not an excuse for breaking the law.
Yeah.
And we all know that, right? You're going the speed limit. You don't know what it is. Maybe you just didn't see the sign. You get pulled over by the cop. You know how fast you were going. We'll argue whether or not you should even say anything later. But at the end of the day, if you were going 50 in a 25 because you thought it was 50, ignorance of that isn't an excuse. You are still probably going to get a significant ticket.
Yep.
Right? And that is so much less of a headache than if you're involved in a real estate transaction and things go south because you didn't. And write this down because this is so important, and your real estate attorney will help you with it. Review the contracts that you're using for your state to make sure that they're legal, because if there's anything wrong with them, guess who's going to be held accountable?
You. And constantly review.
Yes.
So every year you should be looking at your contracts, because every year, the laws change, right? There's new laws on the books all the time. Laws to protect sellers, laws to protect buyers, laws to protect everybody involved in the transaction. And, something could change. We constantly update our purchase and sale agreements because, there's new things that we even learn throughout the process, right? For example, in California, one of the things that's challenging, even if your contract stipulates that, the earnest money for your assignment agreement is non-refundable and should go to you if the buyer cannot perform. In the state of California, you still have to get a signed agreement from the buyer saying that they will release funds. Well, what's the point of having a non-refundable earnest money deposit if I have to have the buyer who doesn't want to lose $20,000 of an earnest money deposit for nothing refuses to sign said agreement, right? So you need to know those things so that you can properly put your agreements together. And, since then we've been able to structure our contracts in a way where, that's not the case for us. They basically waive their rights and our money goes hard as soon as it's in, and we can get an early release of funds, all of those things. So there's different things that you can do to make sure you protect yourself, because the last thing you want to do is get all the way to the finish line, the buyer back out, you're beyond your inspection period, you lose your earnest money deposit to the seller, and you can't even get the earnest money deposit from the buyer, and now you took a loss on a property that you couldn't even make money on. You're just losing money.
Bummer, dude.
Yeah.
So that is definitely one of the ways in which attorneys can help you. It can keep you out of jail or keep you from losing a lot of money.
Yeah.
I think that, and I haven't put that in there
Which
yet.
is basically financial jail.
Financial jail. Keeps you out of jail, and I'll put financial jail right there. The next is buyers/rehabbers, aka investors, because there's retail buyers, right? We're not talking about retail buyers. And the reason I wanted to save this to the end is because I wanted to put it all together, because I know many of you, and if this is you, please say, hey, this was me. I had that same exact question. Where do I find agents, title reps, escrow reps, attorneys? How do I know which ones are? And that is by, as you build your buyers list, by where? Going to meetup.com, real estate investing associations, and meeting the people who are buyers that can open the doors to every single one of these people. Like, hey, who should I avoid, or who is the best in this town? Who should I be using for title, for escrow, right? Or what's a really good real estate attorney that you can recommend, or who is, right? And this is open forums online, just like you said, to Facebook groups. But want to talk about buyers and how they can benefit you. I think we pretty much bottom line this, but like just a quick down and dirty overview of buyers. How the heck can they benefit you?
They buy your deals.
You are good.
They buy your deals. That's probably the most concise way, and they can give you people to help facilitate the transaction. But all of that said, that is the who your team should include at minimum here, and then the benefits of each of them, and then where you can find them. And we can talk about the marketing and all that stuff in another video. Ultimately, what we wanted to provide you with in this video was an overview of how to get started. And we wanted to give tips and pitfalls and tricks.
Yeah, one bonus person that you should definitely build a relationship with is a general contractor or contractor, right? Even if you are not getting started out as a fix and flipper yourself, right? The value in doing that is when you're going out to properties to understand how much the repairs are going to cost, you want to be able to speak confidently to your buyers when you're selling the property, right? And so it's very valuable to build some relationships with contractors so you can understand from them, hey, what would it typically cost for a property in this type of price point to have a kitchen remodel, like top to bottom? What would it on average cost for a bathroom remodel? What would it on average cost for a concrete tile roof versus a shingle roof versus a rolled roof? All these different things. If you're in a market with a basement, like what if I have to do a French drain? What does that cost? What if I have to redo the foundation? What if the pool is completely destroyed? There's a giant crack through it and the foundation is falling apart. Like, what type of costs could be incurred there, right? Like, the value in that is it's going to set you apart as an expert in the space when you're selling these deals to these buyers who, at the end of the day, the most valuable resource you have is the person paying you money, right? Title, escrow, attorneys, all these other people, maybe agents, but even agents, they're just helping, they're just connecting with somebody that's going to pay you money. At the end of the day, where the money comes from is the buyer. So that is literally the most valuable person on the list because they're feeding you, they're putting food on the table, they're helping you pay your electric bill, your mortgage payment, your rent payment, your car payment, whatever it is that's being paid, it's coming from the dollars from those buyers. So if you can satisfy them at a higher level, deliver intelligence to them and wisdom to them and show them that, hey, this is a deal because of this, and this, and I know what I'm talking about because this is the type of foundation crack it is. It's not this over here, and that generally costs this, not this. So your repair budget is going to be X, and they go through and they run the numbers. If you're within, $3,000 to $5,000 of what their numbers come out to, that's a freaking home run.
Yeah.
And they're going to take your word a lot more seriously on the next deal that you bring to them, and the next and the next. And when you consistently deliver on that result, you're going to create a partnership where they always want to be at the top of your buyers list, and they want to be the first person you're sending deals to.
Yeah, that describes our buyers. And, I had been flipping houses before he and I started working together. I was a solopreneur, as it were. And one thing that really benefited us in that regard is I knew and know my repair numbers, even without going to the property. And I don't say that to impress you. I just say that to impress upon you the importance of, as underscoring what Chris said, knowing your numbers is huge. And it's not just the numbers for like, oh, here's your active repair value, here's your purchase price, and here's this random construction cost, my repairs. Why? How? Right? So finding a contractor is really good. And again, where can you find them? I would leverage buyers, although they may keep them tight, close to their chest, because good contractors are hard to find. We'll cover that in other videos. In fact, linked in the description below will be more content regarding the contractors, where to find them, how to vet them, how to hire them, how to train them. In addition to that, you'll also have free education from us about the stages of a rehab and what to look for, how to know when work is completed. I built this office here, and the reason why I was able to do that is because I knew, not from being a licensed contractor, I knew what to look for in terms of how is this done right? And I didn't learn that on my own. I just had really good contractors when I was flipping properties, and I just asked them a bunch of questions. Okay, and you do the same if you have any, leave them in the comment section below. And any other tips, tricks, or anything for this, how to even get started in real estate investing?
No, I think that's it. Just keep following the channel, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can get notified of any new videos that we put out, and keep an eye on different playlists. We generally will do reviews on different software that we use to generate leads in our own business and on behalf of our clients that we do marketing for. We're going to do a playlist on terminology in real estate, so that way you can understand all the different terms that you might hear and what it means and why that's useful. So there's a lot of content that we're going to be putting out over the next 6 months.
And basically, if you have any questions at all about that or any of this in the video that you've heard, please leave it in the comment section below, and we're happy to respond to you as quick as we can.
Awesome.
You guys take it easy, and we'll stay tuned for the next video so you can learn more about how to make real estate investing easy.